Disability Imposter Syndrome. Whew, that is a mouthful. I have definitely been one of those. And I really had to come to a point in my disability identity and where I wanted to ground myself in the larger disability community to fully understand and to reframe what disability means to me. Unfortunately, we have a lot of systems that have categorized disabilities into very certain molds, and those molds are more rigid than they are flexible. And so then we have a lot of people who are flooding and coming into the disability community questioning if their disability is legitimate based off of the systemic rules and regulations. SSI is a perfect example that there are more people with disabilities who do not qualify for SSI because the system has declared them to not fit into their specific mold of disability. Now, there are a lot of political agents that have determined that, but for me as a person with a disability, I kind of had to take that weight off and that question mark over my head that was asking, am I disabled enough? As a person who was born with all of my disabilities and congenital chronic illnesses and abnormalities, yes, I am disabled. And that is due to diagnoses, and that is also due to lived experience. And no matter what any system, policy, or regulation says, my lived experiences prove otherwise. And so I want to help other people who are maybe new in their disability journey to be able to see themselves within the broader disability community. You know, especially those who are coming from neurodivergent community, a lot of the autism community, more invisible and non-apparent disabilities, because we will often, like I said, chalk up to disability to these legitimized and non-legitimized forms, and that's simply not true. You can have diabetes and be considered a disabled person. Long COVID, I mentioned this earlier, is an example of being inducted and engrafted into the disability community just based off of symptoms alone that have limited or prohibited major life activities or functions. And so oftentimes we hear in the disability advocacy space is that everyone in some point in their life can and will experience a disability. Just look at the aging population. There's a big group when, as you age, you will experience things such as hearing loss, lack of mobility, different things like that, which will cause disability. And so the question is not, am I disabled enough? The question is, what about the disability community is most resonating with me, where I can find access, support, and equity to my lived experience as a human being. And I think when we start on that premise alone and remove kind of the gatekeeping about who is disabled, who's not disabled, then we can create access for everybody. One of the things I love, and that I know myself and many disabled advocates and leaders always say, is that accessibility benefits everybody, not just disabled populations, but non-disabled. A perfect example of this is closed captioning. How many of us, I'm deaf and hard of hearing, but how many of us who are not deaf and hard of hearing are using closed captionings to watch Netflix? Because it just basically amplifies the visual experience. And so this is what I think about, that the labeling of disability, that is not something that's meant to only catch a certain few, but I think we should think about expanding the framework to help and support and accommodate the many.